ambitious statutory goals to combat climate change and protect the environment and public health. By 2045,
those requirements require us to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 85% below 1990 levels and to reach carbon neutrality by 2045. So to achieve this, as we laid out in our 2022 scoping plan, we need to dramatically reduce our reliance on fossil fuels and transition to cleaner fuels and technologies. And the aviation sector is going to play a key role in that work. This 200 million gallon goal will allow us to meet about 40% of intrastate travel demand with sustainable aviation fuel in 2035, helping to support both California's climate targets and the airline's commitments to achieve net zero carbon emissions by 2050. This bold goal builds on the development of cleaner fuels under California's low carbon fuel standard, which incentivizes the production and use of low and zero carbon fuels for transportation. CARB has a track record of successfully partnering with industry to advance the state's air quality requirement goals. For instance, our framework agreements with automakers, our clean truck partnership with truck manufacturers to support California's efforts to decarbonize the transportation sector and benefit both the industry and the public. These partnerships will encourage innovation, ensure that the clean technologies we need are built, provide the industry with the certainty needed to make investments and create jobs, and give companies the flexibility to successfully transition to low carbon and zero emission vehicles. Under the agreement announced today, CARB and A4A will collaborate to identify, evaluate, prioritize new policies and actions to accelerate the availability and use of sustainable aviation fuel, including incentives for investment and timely payment. Together, we will convene government and industry stakeholders in a sustainable aviation fuel working group, which will address barriers and report on progress. CARB staff will also create a public website that tracks the availability and use of both conventional jet fuel and sustainable fuel in California. And importantly, this agreement supports the goals of the Biden-Harris administration's Sustainable Aviation Fuel Grand Challenge, which helps drive the transition to sustainable aviation, not just in California, but throughout the nation. So thank you all for joining us to celebrate this historic partnership. And I'm going to hand it over to Kevin Welsh, the Chief Sustainability Officer for Airlines for America.
Thank you, Chair Randolph. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm pleased to be here on behalf of Airlines for America. We are an association that represents large U.S. passenger and cargo airlines, joined by several of them here in the room today, along with a number of sustainable aviation fuel producers, including Evo, Pandajet, Montana Renewables, Ametis, and other SAF stakeholders as well. We're glad that you all can be here. Commercial aviation helps drive over $1.3 trillion in economic activity annually and more than 10 million U.S. jobs. And Airlines for America and our members are focused on doing so sustainably. U.S. airlines are committed to reducing the climate impacts of aviation and achieving net zero emissions by 2050. Transitioning to sustainable aviation fuels is core to this commitment. Fueling planes with safe, lower carbon, lower emission sustainable fuels is not a future idea. It's here today. Sustainable aviation fuels are produced from a range of renewable feedstocks and production processes to meet robust sustainability criteria and achieve certified carbon emissions reductions relative to conventional petroleum fuels. Most importantly, they can be used safely with today's aircraft engines and fuel infrastructure so that we can reduce emissions now. California has led the way on sustainable aviation fuels. Back in 2016, United Airlines took the first delivery of SAF from World Energy's Paramount facility at LAX. Today, sustainable aviation fuel is supplied to SFO, LAX, and many airports throughout the state, used by airlines and the business aviation community alike. Not only are passenger and cargo airlines using SAF today, but they are continually making investments, announcing new offtake agreements and taking concrete steps to expand the availability, use, and cost competitiveness of staff throughout their networks. Collectively, the A4A and our member airlines have pledged to work with governments and other stakeholders to make 3 billion gallons of cost-competitive staff available in the United States in 2030. And today's announcement complements that goal with a specific focus on increasing staff availability for use in California. Now, this is where the challenge lies. As much good news as there is on staff, it remains costly at 2 to 3 times the price of conventional jet fuel. And it hasn't attracted the type and scale of investment needed to dramatically increase the level of production. Without attracting more investment, removing barriers to building and expanding staff production facilities, and putting in place new and durable policy incentives to produce staff, it will be tough to meet these ambitious goals. This is why we are so excited about today's announcement with the Air Resources Board. We haven't just set a goal for accelerating staff availability in California, but we've announced a new collaborative effort to work together with CARB, airlines, and other key stakeholders to address the challenges, identify new and innovative policy approaches, and focus on accelerating the increase in sustainable aviation fuels. With the ambitious goals that governments and industry have put in place over the last several years, there's a collective recognition of how hard these climate goals are to achieve. Commitments and actions like the staff partnership that we're announcing today are exactly the types of actions and collaboration that are needed to turn these goals into reality. And with that, I thank you very much, and I'm pleased to introduce California Air Resources Board member who represents the Bay Area, City of Belmont Council member, United.
Good afternoon. As we gather here in unincorporated San Mateo County, right on the beautiful San Francisco Peninsula, I'm filled with optimism about what today represents. This partnership is more than just a formal agreement. It signifies our commitment to true progress, rooted in collective action. Together, we are not just taking a step forward in cleaner fuels, but creating a ripple effect of positive change that will resonate throughout the 9 counties of the Bay Area and extend to the state of California and beyond. In my roles both at CARB and at the Bay Area Air Quality Management District, it is a priority for me to bring cleaner air to California communities, particularly those that face the highest pollution burdens and are the most vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. Today's agreement will help us make progress towards our air quality and public health goals, as well as our greenhouse gas reduction targets. Increased availability and use of sustainable aviation fuel in California will help us significantly reduce pollution exposure for communities living near and working at our airports. Transitioning to cleaner aviation fuels is especially critical because aircraft emissions are projected to increase in California in the coming years. Between 2020 and 2050, we expect to see increased criteria pollutant emissions from aircrafts, including nitrogen oxides, particulate matter, and reactive organic gases. Greenhouse gas emissions from jet fuel consumption are also expected to increase from 2020 to 2045 due to growing demand for flight and aviation travel. Given these projections, it is essential that we must push forward and transition to cleaner fuels so that this increased aviation activity does not add to the pollution burdens on our frontline communities and all those communities along the flight path. We are making progress on reducing disproportionate pollution that these communities have faced historically. And so I am very thrilled to see the innovation and air quality benefits that this agreement will bring to Californians. Let's continue to do remarkable things together. Our environment and future generations require this of us. I would like to now introduce Katia Gombreen, the Managing Director, State and Local Government Affairs of United Airlines.
Thank you, CARB member and Councilmember Hurd, for your kind introduction. Today, United is here to reaffirm our commitment to advancing low-carbon, sustainable aviation fuel across California and the nation, with deep appreciation to CARB for your support and your leadership. United was the first U.S. airline to use SAF in regular operations, beginning in California in 2016, as my colleague Kevin mentioned, and the first to set a goal of net zero emissions by 2050, without relying on voluntary carbon offsets. Achieving this ambitious goal demands rapid scaling of SAF supply, and United has taken real steps to lead this change. In 2023, we purchased more SAF than any other U.S. airlines, and that's because we just all compute, so I had to throw a little bit in there, fueled by Eco Skies Alliance, where partner companies held the green premium to support low-emission fuel purchases. Since 2021, the Alliance has contributed to over 10.5 million gallons of SAF, with partners like San Francisco 49ers joining the effort. Go Niners! Beyond these purchases, United launched the United Airlines Venture Sustainability Flight Fund to support startups focused on decarbonizing air travel. With over $200 million invested from United and corporate partners, along with contributions from our customers, this fund drives innovation in SAF, production, and technology. However, we know these efforts alone won't meet the climate challenge. Public policy is essential, and United is helping support and lead, advocating for legislation to expand SAF production. Working together, we can ensure that U.S. leads in this vital industry. We look forward to collaborating with CARB and the industry and California leaders to make sustainable air travel a reality. Now it is my pleasure to introduce a longtime friend and colleague, Aaron Cook, the Director of Sustainability and Resilience for San Francisco International Airport. Wonderful, thank you. SFO is proud to welcome decarbonization partners from across the industry, represented by Airlines for America and the leadership of the California Air Resources Board, who clearly and collectively continue to push the front lines of sustainable aviation. Our shared commitment to sustainable aviation fuel, leveled up with today's commitment, represents a critical step towards cleaner skies globally and healthier communities that start here in the Bay Area. By fostering new partnerships that can further scale SAF in our state, we can drive down emissions, support innovation, and set a new standard for responsible travel. As only California can and must, with new climate threats growing on our coastlines and in our forests and impacting our sector and our infrastructure, there really is no time for delay. Today, our airport reaffirms its commitment to people and planet, focused on our mission, by offering support to advance today's announcement. Our team stands ready to do whatever it takes to ensure that California skies stay blue, with more SAF on the horizon and departing from SFO's gates, as well as our other airport partners. That's a competitive angle. So with that, I'm also really honored to welcome another woman in green, Robin Cruz, who is joining us from the Low Carbon Fuels Coalition. Robin.
Always envy people who don't read glasses yet.
Contact.
So thank you for having me here today. The Low Carbon Fuels Coalition exists to build industry consensus for a fuel technology neutral approach to decarbonizing transportation across the board. I am honored to be here on behalf of our members, which include end users, feedstock providers, and producers of sustainable aviation fuels using diverse technologies, as well as a dedicated advisory committee for SAF. We are all united in supporting policies to accelerate the development, scalability, availability, and use of SAF. Our SAF producer members and their feedstock providers stand ready and willing to make the necessary investments to achieve the goals set out here today in response to supporting policies. All of the hard work by CARB leadership, who's here today, and staff that has gone into strengthening the LCFS program in the current rulemaking, scheduled for a vote next week, which we very much hope will pass, provides a vital foundation for the policy support that they and all of the other producers here today need. The long-term signal provided by the LCFS creates investment certainty for both producers and off-takers. In addition, the voluntary partnership and industry working group announced here today set the stage to build on the LCFS by collaboratively identifying other policy measures to both accelerate SAF development, availability, and use, and remove barriers to the adoption of SAF. The Low Carbon Fuels Coalition and our SAF Advisory Committee enthusiastically supports this cooperative process and looks forward to engaging along with on behalf of our SAF members. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lisa, and I'm the Director of Communications at CARB. We have time for a few questions from reporters.
So this is coming, I know, ahead of next week's vote, and the airline industry is exempted from LCFS, or at least what the updates from next week. A big question that we continue to have ahead of next week's vote is on the cost to consumers. And I know there was a mention of that, SAF is about 2 to 3 times more expensive than jet fuel. So what would be the cost to airline passengers in California with this new goal?
So, Joanna, do you want to take that question, or? Yeah, I guess I'll start with this is an example of where deployment really kind of determines what those costs will be, right? So the airlines will determine how much they're going to purchase, how it compares to their other strategies to decarbonize, and try to do it in a way that's as cost effective to their customers as possible. And perhaps having can sort of provide more context in how airlines sort of make those kinds of decisions.
Right, so I don't have an answer of a cost, and that's in part because airlines individually negotiate the price for these fuels with the suppliers on a one-on-one basis. But what I will say is the current approach for the LCFS that allows sustainable aviation fuel to have an opt-in credit, that combined with federal incentives, including the current federal tax incentives under the Inflation Reduction Act, they actually bring down that price of SAF to make it more cost competitive. So from an airline perspective, as I mentioned during my remarks, the goal is to have as cost competitive SAF as possible, but certainly we recognize as this industry is scaling up, there are needs for capital costs and other things, and so we're working on bringing that down. But I don't have a sort of sticker price to provide you on sort of what meeting that goal would cost.
I'm just asking for mainly the expectation, like can airline passengers potentially expect to pay more for their tickets with this new goal?
Well, I don't think that's the case, and I think what you've seen and what I mentioned is you've seen airlines in California increase the amount and availability of sustainable aviation fuel they're using today, and so they expect to do that. And what you've seen in the years since the pandemic is that airfares on average are actually been decreasing. So what the consumers expect from airlines is consistently low fares, and that's what they continue to get. Airlines will stand behind that, but they will also focus on increasing the use of sustainable aviation fuel.
My last question, sorry. Was Boeing, the plane manufacturers, involved in these discussions?
Boeing is not part of the partnership, but of course Boeing is also works in this space and on sustainable aviation fuel as well.
But they weren't involved in this agreement? Like they're not part of...
No, they're not.
Okay.
There's a question in the back.
My next person is field. Can you describe what SAF are? I understand if I'm right, regular fuel combined with biofuels. So they're not emission free, correct? How much of a carbon reduction do they?
Sure, thank you. That's a great question. So the question, just to repeat it, is kind of what are sustainable aviation fuels and how much do they reduce emissions? As I mentioned, sustainable aviation fuels is a broad term for alternatives, like renewable fuel alternatives that could come from biomass, that could come from fat, oils, and greases, waste products. It could come from agricultural non-food products that don't compete with food, that both meet a set of robust sustainability criteria, but also have the life cycle carbon emissions validated. So through the production of these fuels, it is demonstrated in a verified way that the fuels have lower carbon emissions than conventional petroleum. So there's a wide range of fuels that can meet that criteria. They're not by definition a certain percentage of reduction. It really depends on the fuel that's produced, where it came from, and the certification of that particular fuel. And that's a key part of the process, obviously, in terms of having a credible reduction in emissions.
Is there a ballpark?
The range can be anywhere from 50% reduction to all the way up to 100%.
And I'll just add that this is an example of an industry where it's going to take a lot of time to get to zero, decades. And so having a sustainable fuel option is a critical way for this industry to decarbonize. And it's an example of how important it is to have a suite of solutions available to meet our spectral goals. Russ?
Hi, I have a question for Mr. Cliff. If the LCFS passes next week, will gasoline costs rise? That's a yes or no question, but feel free to elaborate on the yes or the no.
Sorry, I didn't hear the last part of the gas prices.
Will the gas costs rise if the vote, and that's yes or no, but feel free to elaborate.
I don't expect them to.
Sorry, could you say that in the microphone? Please.
Sure. Hi, Steve Cliff, Executive Officer with the California Air Resources Board. So the question was, if the LCFS passes next week, will gas prices...
That's not the question. Gas costs.
Gas costs rise. And my response was, no, I don't expect them to.
The refiners will not bear any cost through these amendments?
So the compliance costs are expected to have some impact. In terms of the overall impact of gas costs in California, our analysis shows that the total cost of driving, including gas costs, will continue to decline.
But that's a yes. Basically, for the refiners, their costs will rise. Just want to make sure.
I honestly don't know how to answer that question correctly.
You're the executive director of CARB. You don't know.
I'm happy to take that question
One
offline.
more thing. You're passing these rules. People in the public want to know what the effect is going to be. And you're saying, as the executive officer of CARB, that you have no idea whether refiners are going to bear an increase in cost through the amendments. I just want to make sure that's what you're saying.
Actually, what I said is that our analysis shows that the total cost of driving will
I'm not
decline,
asking about the total cost of driving.
including gas
I'm
costs.
not asking about that. I'm asking whether refiners will bear more costs. It's a very simple question.
There will be additional impacts and compliance costs for
So
refiners.
yes.
That is correct.
So yes.
Yes, and that's detailed in our analysis.
Okay, that's fine.
Any other questions on this topic?
I have one more quick question. It's for CARB. I mean, is the goal here, like, let's be upfront with voters and taxpayers. Is the goal here to make gas so expensive for drivers that they move toward electrification, they move toward other types of fuel? I mean, it's EVs. I mean, is that the goal?
The goal of the low carbon fuel standard is to reduce the carbon intensity of transportation fuels in California.
That's not the question, Madam Chair, respectfully.
That is in fact the goal. Because fossil fuels have a higher carbon intensity, the fossil fuel producers need to take steps to comply with the regulation. And those steps result in increased variety of fuels available and overall lower the carbon emitted throughout our transportation sector. A good example is renewable diesel, right? More than 50% of the diesel sold in the state right now is now renewable diesel. And the cost curve for renewable diesel since 2022 has become less than fossil diesel. So there are people driving trucks today, using equipment today, that are paying less for diesel fuel because they have more choices and there's more competition in the market. All of those efforts, all of that variety in fuels will help reduce costs to move people around the state of California. Thank you.
And this wraps up the Q&A session. We do have validation for parking, so if you have that, there's the ticket with you can validate in the back, and there are refreshments and other snacks available. So thank you so much for joining, and